Hello, this is my first YouTube video, or at least first official YouTube video. I just wanted to make it in case it would help anybody who's gone through a similar experience to me, or going through a similar experience to me, or possibly help in the future, my future incarnations, if they ever come across this video, even though that chance is probably not likely. I just wanted to talk about a lot of things, really. I wanted to talk about a lot of things, mostly in regards to spirituality and people working with statues and the dangers of that kind of stuff. But I just try to get into the topic that I want, which I want to talk about. Where it all started. This is kind of like my own testimony, even though it hasn't really worked out for me yet. But basically, I had this problem which started when I was about 14, 15. I think psychologists categorize it as OCD, but I don't know if I regard it the same way I do now as I did back then, where my thoughts were racing and I felt like I was getting a lot more thoughts over the years. It's hard to describe. It's just the amount of thoughts I was having was increasing, and I would feel like I would have to correct these thoughts. They would revolve around mostly feeling like I couldn't fail. Like I didn't want to fail my parents and fail my mum. Yeah. And I would try to avoid words which were similar to words like failure. And if I heard the word failure, I would try to get rid of the negative feeling associated towards it, or even make people take back the word, which was wrong with me, but it's just the way I was feeling. I would try to avoid any words that were connotative of failure or other words, but this eventually developed into more corrections that I don't know. This would eventually lead to me having more intrusive thoughts, which were just negative and arranged from all sorts of things, like bad things happening to the people I cared about, and a lot of other negative things, like bad things happening to me, or me failing, or just negative things happening to me, traumatic things like death or being killed or murdered, or that kind of stuff. And I'll feel the need to correct those thoughts, and it eventually progressed into me trying to correct them by imagining me defending against an attack or defending my family against attack, by using spatial things like feeling the object, almost imagining like a knife trying to pierce me, but I'll block it or put a barrier in front of me where the knife will break on the barrier. But I would have to also put those barriers around the people I cared about as well. And it became very taxing because I always had to do these corrections when around other people. And there'll be more like potential for negative thoughts depending on the scenarios. And it was just a lot of intrusive thoughts where I'd think things I didn't want to think. And depending on what I thought, I would have to correct it. Say if I wished death by accident on somebody, I'd have to wish for that wish not to come true, and it'd be a cycle where another thought will pop into my head, and I have to go over and over again, say I wish that not to come true, and over again until I felt satisfied. Because I always felt, even from when I was younger, from a kid, I always felt that thoughts had an effect on the reality around us. So having negative thoughts, I just felt more susceptible to the idea that it could affect people I cared about or people I didn't want to hurt. So I felt like I had to correct these thoughts. Even if I imagined harm coming to somebody, I had to correct it by imagining the harm not happening to them. Or if I thought words, I would have to correct the words. And it would just be a cycle that would last a really long time. But eventually I realised that these behaviours were developing a part of my brain which would lead to deeper psychosis. I'll explain more in this, yeah. these negative thoughts would eventually start producing hysterias in me. By hysterias, I mean when the things in my head would become almost physical manifestations, and I'll feel them around my body. And I'll feel energy build up in my face and around my head, and then parts of my body which are related to my thoughts. Like, for instance, if I got stabbed or got dominated somehow, I'd feel that area of my body which is related to that enactment in my head. And I would have to like clench or try to remove those physical sensations by clenching that area of my body or trying to remove the energy somehow. Yeah, which eventually led to other things. In around 2014, I started to experience a lot of sleep paralysis. And this will happen a lot of times in a row, like 4 times in a row before I could fall asleep, where I couldn't breathe and I couldn't move and my eyes would be open. It didn't matter really what position I was in bed, but it mostly happened when I was on my back. Yeah, I couldn't breathe, and I would feel like I was slowly blacking out, and the only thing that would shake was my head slightly. It felt as though if I didn't fight against the force, if I didn't fight back against being strangled while I was sleeping, or the sleep apnea while I was in sleep paralysis, it would feel like I was blacking out. And if I didn't shake my head, it felt like I would black out and die from being strangled in sleep paralysis. I would fear going to sleep because I would always get caught between sleep, unable to breathe or move. Yeah. During this point in time, I couldn't see the entities that were strangling me, but later on I could eventually see them. I would get a lot of hysterias from all the thoughts I was having. I couldn't control them, and there was always so many thoughts. It was just too much. I'd think things I didn't want to. I would get physical reactions, a backlash of thinking certain things that would result in hysterias. To reiterate, hysterias are physical sensations or feelings related to thoughts. And it didn't help that I had a lot of self-sabotaging behaviours which seemed to be programmed into me. I don't know what it was. Like, for example, like, as a man, I don't really want to be a woman. But in my head, I would have the thought that I'd wish to be a woman, and that conflict will like result in like a huge hysteria building up in my chest. Almost like I was trying to give myself boobs or something. And I would have to try to clear the energy. Or another time where I accidentally had the thought where I would say I offer myself up to the Baphomet, which is a demon or entity, and I would feel like something was trying to enter my body and enter my eyes, and I feel like it's overwhelming force and these feelings trying to enter me, and I'll be unable to open my eyes or open my mouth because I feel like things are trying to enter me. That's how powerful the sensations were, and these feelings will be overwhelming and will fill my body and fill my face, and my skin will get darker because of how hard I was rubbing my forehead or rubbing the parts of my body which were filled with these sensations. The corrections would get harder and increasingly more difficult as they began to incorporate spatial tasks. Spatial tasks being tasks where I would use my mind to apply physical sensations to objects I can see or imagine and interact and try to move these forms. I did this to try fight against a sensation that my thoughts would result in consequences for myself and others. I'll be there for hours trying to resolve them. I eventually came to realize that the entities around me were making it harder for me to do these corrections. Also, when I was around other people, it would feel like I was absorbing their energies almost, because I felt like after I would hang around them, I would feel like I was them. And the persona I used around my friends, it would linger after I hanged out with them, and I could feel those sensations build up around my face and my body. It felt like my personality. I could feel it physically on my face and on my body. And I would try to break or get rid of those feelings when I got home by clenching those areas on my face and my head and body. Another example of a spatial task I would do, or an intrusive thought I would have, would be imagining someone close to me getting shot in the head, and I would have to correct it spatially by making the bullet come back through the head and repair all the damage spatially and make the bullet go back into the barrel of the gun while applying texture and weight to the gun and bullet and to the person. This will sometimes take hours, and I'll be there for ages just trying to correct them and apply all these spatial forces, which would be really difficult because it felt like something was making it way harder to do. Like when I would try to move the bullet into the gun, it would, and back for the person, it felt like there was this force against me which was making it harder to do it. So the bullet would keep going forward through the person's head when I tried to move it backwards into the bullet and into the gun and repair the person's head. But there was something like a huge resistance which was making it way harder, which felt like it was increasing or exercising the part of my brain which made me more susceptible to other things later on. Eventually the hysterias became too much, and trying to clench and remove the energies and sensations around my face resulted in the crown of my head bursting, or what felt like the crown of my head bursting. And as a result, I lost a lot of emotions, and it affected my cognition greatly. By this I mean it was harder for me to think creatively and come up with ideas or understand and explain concepts. Thinking in general was really hard, and I couldn't process complex information. Like playing games like Battlefield and processing all those dynamics, which I would usually do with ease, was way harder, and I had to sit down and take a break because of the brain fog which just came from it, and the mental fatigue. After the crown of my head burst, I could feel like something was blocking my emotions or blocking me from indulging in certain emotions, because during that time before my crown burst, I was indulging in a lot of stressful emotions, which led to me overtraining and really pushing exercises like running and cardio, which I think also added to my crown or bursting. After that point, sleep was really difficult. I didn't realize how much emotions played a role in sleep until I lost them, and how much they affected the body's ability to recover from injuries, and how much mental stability emotions could give you. To explain it further, it felt like I lost the warm water around my head, which made me feel comfortable, or just made me feel like being comfortable in my body and being comfortable staying alive. It made me feel more suicidal almost. Instead of the warm water feeling around my head, which makes you feel stable, I felt this dryness, which made me feel really uncomfortable in my body. I became really detached and found it really hard to take anything seriously. I had lost my intensity and the ability to feel love for things that were important to me. I would hug my grandma's dog and not feel anything for my own mom, even though I knew I loved her. In 2017, I was in a space where I had overtrained my body from exercise and had lost my emotions. I couldn't find answers. I wasn't recovering either. So I began to look outside of myself for explanations into spirituality, which is probably a mistake, but I had no direction, because I just wanted explanations to explain the things I was going through, because science couldn't really explain it. So of course I turned to spirituality, which I now really regret in a lot of ways, because it put me into some negative positions, which is my own fault, of course, but I still regret it. During this period, I noticed that more often something was entering my dreams, and I could tell it wasn't something I created. It had its own autonomy. Now I realize it was signs of something outside of myself increasingly gaining the ability to affect me. Over time, that ability was growing stronger. I began meditating during this period of time. One time when I was meditating, a female voice called out my name. Something would also be tickling my ears and tapping on the windows. Sometimes there would be loud bangs. Bottles of water would pop in front of me loads of times in succession. Something would also tap the floor around me, and those same noises would follow me when I went to other people's houses. After a couple minutes of settling in, it only increased over time. There were times when I was lying on my bed dealing with intrusive thoughts, and something would slap me on my head like they were trying to snap me out of it. I always assumed it was a woman. When I would cover my face, it would feel like something was lifting the hood of my top, and I would sometimes feel as though I'm being pushed up against the wall by a spirit. At night, I could vaguely see something coming down from above, lying on my stomach. I would feel my penis move side to side by itself, and I couldn't get rid of the tingling sensation in my genitals. When going to sleep, I would have a wet dream. This would happen often. I could often feel a presence around me when I'm drawing. Something would enter my field of vision on my right side, and I could vaguely see an 8-foot tall figure standing behind me. I often tried to remove the tingling in my genitals, the sensations that would build up sometimes. And one of the times when I was trying to remove the energies that built up there, an image of a black woman with white makeup on her face projected into my mind, which made me think that was possibly a spirit that was bothering me, or possibly the spirit that was causing me to have wet dreams at night. When I began to research spirituality for answers for what was happening to me, I came across all sorts of videos and sites that talked about the etheric body, metaphysics, numerology, etymology, and conspiracies. I was open, really open. It felt like I was finally getting explanations for all my problems. I put my faith in numbers and divination to help guide me through this empty period of my life. Setting alarms at specific times I had mentally allocated meaning to. I would set my alarms to 555 because I believed that the energy of that number would bring the change into my life that would lead to my complete recovery. This was something that I researched online when trying to find the meaning of certain numbers. My intrusive thoughts were getting worse, and so were the hysterias. I couldn't watch videos with people in them because I would be overwhelmed with a derogative feeling that I was them. Like a mask was being forcibly stuck to my face and I had to rip it off. When I would look outside, it always looked like it was raining, when it wasn't. Everything was vibrating, lines would whiz around me, and eventually blue orbs of light would flash in my eyes, just floating and looking at me. I saw a lot of colours, but the one that stood out the most was a large golden light that appeared in my front room. Also, a white cloud also appeared in my dining room as well. I now understand that this was me starting to be able to see certain entities that were around me, especially more vividly. As the raining and vibrations started to take form as people and other things other people couldn't see. At night, I would see a lot of black figures moving around in the corner of my eye, getting closer to me and standing over me. Sometimes when I woke up, I would see geometric patterns on the ceiling. I started to be able to see steam that was coming off my body that no one else could see. It filled the whole room, and once I could see it, I could feel it. It was similar to like Nen in Hunter x Hunter. I began to notice that aura or energy began leaving my hands. And after watching videos on Reiki healing and creating aura balls with your hands and being inspired by Hunter x Hunter and Nen training, I began to try applying those techniques into removing hysteria with my hands. Eventually I could just do it with my mind. When I would have intrusive thoughts, sometimes I could feel energy and waves shooting out of my head and towards people I didn't want it to go to. I watched a video on soul origins, star seeds, twin flames, and incarnates. They talked about how some souls originated from other star systems, and that some people could be incarnations of legendary heroes and mythological figures and characters. I thought I was someone called Achilles, a demigod, because of the signs I thought I was getting, which I was completely wrong about. Because of these overlapping signs and synchronicities between myself and these figures in mythology, I thought I was a lot of people. From thinking I was Achilles, I began to also believe in reincarnation and started to fantasize about my other past lives and who else I could have been throughout history. I also thought I was the Greek god Hermes because of the synchronicities I was seeing. When researching, I would find and learn how figures like Hermes could be equated to gods from other mythologies and folklore, which gave me infinite amount of material to find synchronicities in. For example, the Romans believed that their gods personified themselves in other cultures' deities, like Mercury to Hermes, and from Hermes to Archangel Raphael, and from Raphael to Mercury, and from Mercury to Odin, and Odin to the Celtic god Lugh. From the Celtic god Lugh, or Lu, who was related to kingship, the idea that I was the born king of England started to grow. It was a delusion that really built over time, a delusion that I really regret. I really thought I was the born king of England. Before I lost my emotions in 2017, I would get a lot of anxiety. My mind became aware to a lot of themes, meanings, primal ones like family and survival. I felt extremely vulnerable within my small family and that I needed to protect everyone. I needed to become the strongest, and the only way to do that plausibly would be to become all-powerful and self-sufficient, like a god or higher being. After my crown burst in 2017, I could no longer indulge in emotions related to stress and fighting against injustice. It felt as though something outside of myself was blocking me from feeling certain emotions and suppressing me. That same force would also take away my feelings of inspiration and slow down my thoughts. Only after 2017, when my crown burst, did I notice that spirits were suppressing my emotions and taking away my feelings and slowing down my thoughts. Before that, they never really took away my emotions. One time when I tried to break out of, get my emotions back and just try to break out of whatever trap I was in, one of them injected me in my right arm to try and suppress me. And often they would take away my mental state, which would be of anger and rage, to try and get my emotions back. I thought trying to indulge in anger would lead to me getting my emotions back, but they would just take it away. They would sometimes put astral pills in my mouth. I would try not to swallow them, but eventually I would just give in and swallow them because it would get rid of the sensation that something was in the back of my throat. At the beginning, nothing would happen when I swallowed them, but as their influence over me grew stronger, they started to have an effect. In 2020, I began to be constantly awoken by something in the morning, which I now attribute to the spirits because of their influence going stronger over me. One time when I was in sleep paralysis, I heard my front door slam open and heard people coming in my house and talking. They slowly started to come upstairs. I shut myself out of it before they reached my room. Another time I felt a strong force attached to me, like it was descending on me. I could see an image of a woman in my mind's eye descending upon me. To break the sensation, I took a knife out of the kitchen and cut my hand in an attempt to get rid of the feeling and to break the connection. It worked for the time being. A month or so after this, when I was indulging in stressful emotions or stressful feelings, I felt something in my heart burst and life was leaving my body. That's what it felt like. When it happened, I could feel a huge dog standing over me and drooling. It felt like the energy was shooting out of my heart and my spirit was leaving my body. I couldn't walk up the stairs as it felt like I couldn't breathe because my body was filled with stress hormones. I didn't want to go to a hospital because I thought they wouldn't be able to help me, just like they couldn't help me when I first overtrained my body and lost my emotions. Plus it was quarantine. I decided to solve the problem myself and use my aura and crystals to heal myself. My body was getting really cold, my skin was tightening, and I felt like I was leaving my body. I put on 3 layers of hoodies to stop the heat from leaving my body, put on the heater and filled my hot water bottle and poured my aura through my hands, through my crystals, and imagined repairing my heart. I couldn't go to sleep until I felt stable, so I was up all night trying to fight the feeling that I was dying. The morning came and I could feel what felt like goggles being removed from my eyes, and after that I could stare into the sun as long as I wanted without needing to look away. I don't know how I got to sleep that morning. I now understand that that was machinery that was attached to me pre-incarnation that was removed from my eyes because of the stress that I had went through. It removed it. During one of the nights, I had sleep paralysis and I was being strangled once again, and I could feel things breaking away from my spine and the back of my neck during the paralysis when I was fighting to breathe, which I now understand as being more machinery that was breaking off of me that was possibly implanted pre-incarnation or in a past life, which reinforces my ideas that I have possibly been imprisoned on this planet, and the spirits that were around me before were possibly handlers trying to keep me in the soul trap. It seemed that all the years of doing spatial tasks and my heart bursting made me rise in frequency to the point where spirits could now interact with me more freely. On one of the nights, something caught me between sleep, and it felt like a spear had gone into the side of my stomach. It felt like my guts were pouring out, and that process of feeling like I was dying started all over again. I could feel the wound on my body months after I was stabbed by the spear. I was traumatized from this experience. I didn't want to trigger it again. I was scared of fighting for my life again. My heart was in really bad shape. It was beating irregularly and hurting. I was already looking outside of myself for answers, but when I took a walk 2 days after my heart burst, which was really difficult because it was really hard to walk because of the condition of my heart, I had my playlist on shuffle, and because of the videos I watched in the past of deities and gods working through synchronicity and using shufflemancy, shuffling your songs and giving you meanings to communicate with you, a delusion that I had built over time really came to bite me. When I walked past a place which had, a housing apartment district which had the name Hermes in it, and the music on my phone shuffled to a song called Family. So I took this as the final nail in the coffin, the final synchronicity supporting my belief that I was Hermes. So when I got home, I bought a set of 5 statues of the Greek gods Artemis, Apollo, Aphrodite, Hermes and Zeus, which was the worst decision I made in my life, which eventually ruined my life. When the statues arrived, nothing was weird at first, but after running my aura through the statues, which was a habit that I developed after learning to put my aura into objects, and putting the statues into my room, I could feel myself being touched, stung and electrocuted. Because of the videos I've been watching, I just assumed that they were my astral family, because I believed that only spirits that were your family and spirit guides could come through statues and interact with you. But I was completely wrong about that. I didn't take them to be malicious spirits. Only later on did I realize that they were demons. The Greek gods were demons. I already had experience with being physically touched by spirits and rubbed on the face and stuff, but the electric shocks and the stinging was new. Sleeping at night became almost impossible with the statues around. I was always getting strangled even more than before, and this time I could see them doing it. One was a woman in a white dress with long blonde hair floating above me and strangling me with both her hands. The next was a bearded man with white hair who wore robes like a king. He would only put his hand in front of my nose and to block my breath. He looked just like Zeus. Another one, which I think was the same man, but this time he was robeless and muscular. He had me in a chokehold. With the other stranglings, I had to fight my way out of it to breathe, but with the chokehold, it felt like I couldn't do anything. The only reason I could breathe again is because they let go. Sometimes they would burn my organs from the inside, at least that's how it felt. I tried to create tulpas to defend myself, but it didn't work. I wasn't sleeping because they kept strangling me. If I didn't get up, they would escalate the severity of what they would do to me in the sleep paralysis. So I was forced to get up and stay awake. I was really scared of going to sleep. I don't know why I didn't get rid of the statues. I was just convinced that they were my family and they were testing me, which was a stupid thought to have. My delusions really fucked me over. I really am a fool. My family began to notice that I wasn't sleeping and how tired I looked. I came to understand that them touching and interacting with me was also them talking to me. Even though there were spirits around me before, now it felt completely different because these spirits were in my presence, touching me all the time. It felt like I was being watched all the time. They could read my thoughts and they would react to things I was thinking by touching me aggressively and stinging or shocking me. It was like they were trying to wear me down. The electric shocks were huge. They were radiated outwards and would even drop me to the floor. They started to pour this foam of energy, which was like foam, down the crown of my head, the area that popped when I first lost my emotions. It was uncomfortable. It felt like I couldn't let this energy pass through and into my body. It just felt too restrictive. I would try and create spatial pillars starting from inside my body and coming out of my head while clenching my crown at the same time to try and stop the cloudy energy from coming into me. This is when I realized that when my crown burst, there was actually a hole on my astral body, or I don't know how it works, but there was a hole there. Me trying to stop the cloudy energy from going into my crown was putting a lot of pressure on my heart, and I felt it burst again. It wasn't as bad as the first one, but this happened over and over again every time I was trying to stop the energy from going into my head. They were sending loads of frequencies into my ear and bombarding me with them. I could feel almost like they were putting headphones onto my ears so I could hear more of their sounds only, which I now realize was more machinery attaching to me to try and, I don't know what it was for. They would slow down my thoughts just like the spirits that were around me before did, and they would take away my emotions and make it hard for me to get manic or show distress. I think they did this so I wouldn't take it seriously and try to get rid of them early. As the longer I left it, the more their attachment to me grew. I could see them fading in and out of my vision, like they were trying to stop me from seeing them. They were way taller than me. It was mostly a tall woman in a black hooded robe that I would see often, which I now believe to be Artemis. Eventually, she would enter my body through my left shoulder and force her way into my body through my left shoulder and spread and root herself in my spine. She then projected her face in my mind. She was white, just like the others, and had red hair, yellow eyes, and a tiara on her forehead. She looked a lot like the true form of Midna from Zelda. From that point on, when I would see her, she was no longer standing in my space, but directly over my body. I could feel her talking from within my body and muscles. I could feel her emotions, her hate, and how evil she was. The next couple of days after she was doing a lot of work in my feet and toes, I didn't know why she was doing it, but eventually I could feel almost like a portal was open like in my feet. It felt like my feet were hanging over a void and energy started pouring into my toes. My toes would move because of this. Energy would rush up my body from my feet and I would feel my muscles compressing in size. I was panicking a lot because I didn't know what was going on. So early in the morning, after watching videos on how to exercise spirits, I went to the shops and bought loads of garlic supplements and a few other organic stuff. The garlic burnt when I tried to eat it, so I swallowed it with water. The garlic brought my feet back to a regular state. I could still feel the void though. When I got home, it felt like they put me in a trance. I felt really dizzy and high. I went to bed and woke up from being strangled again. Energy started to come through my feet again, so I repeated the same process and went to the shops again. If I left my feet in a position where the toes weren't pushed up against something, the energy would come through and it felt like other spirits could come through as well. If I maintained a strong mindset, I could almost resist the energy going into my feet without pressing my toes up against something, but that was only if my feet were still. If I was walking, it wouldn't happen as much, so when I couldn't handle it, I would walk around and go on long walks. The spirits would bump into my legs and try to shake me and push me around to get the energy to go through my feet. They would also take away my strong mindset to shake me, stop me resisting, and make it easier to get the energy to go through my feet. When I say they would take away my mindset, they would literally, in my mind, take away my strong attitude to try and stop them from entering my feet. She started to pull my astral body away from my physical body. I could feel my arms being pulled away. It felt like my left hand was pulled out of my socket, out of my left arm. It felt like my left hand was pulled out of my left arm. It was a sensation that I had felt before that makes me think that I was possibly vulnerable there or something was always pulling there before these spirits came. I could feel my arms losing strength since my astral body wasn't completely filling my corporeal, my real body. I now know that she could see all my potentialities for growth spiritually, and they may have been watching me for a while, but I don't know for sure. Because they knew where I was heading and they knew how to strike. On one evening, it felt like she killed a part of myself, because she stabbed me in the heart and it felt like I died. I saw images of nightmare fuel in my mind. All of the images had strong spatial density, so they felt completely real, and I could feel their forms. One of them was like a spider, which was on a sandy kind of beach. An image of a red-headed man with yellow eyes and horns projected into my mind as well, and I could see them breathing over and over again. It felt like it could have been her. That night when I went to sleep, I had a horrible dream that kids took out my heart and I couldn't do anything about it. They started to force energy on me. It felt like I was being compressed and I could feel the pressure causing my muscles to decrease in size, especially my calves. They also started breaking down the spiritual layers of my hands. I was losing range of motion in my hands, which made it harder to draw. It was getting really hard really hard to draw because of it, and they would make it hard for me to apply spatially when drawing. When I would push past those barriers while indulging in themes and music, I could feel my heart bursting again, and the back left side of my neck and the area connected to my head was also bursting. When it did, I would feel a lot of pleasure, like I acquired a new mental state. They would shake my arms, and at this point, I began to start becoming aware that they wanted to take over my body and possess me completely. I don't know why I didn't realize this earlier. I was being such a fool. After feeling that fear, they would take away my newfound mental state. The new mental state that was based in trauma, like for different mental states that a person has after going through torture or war. They could take away that resulting mental state and piece my mind back together like I had never been through anything in the first place, like that trauma never happened. They started to force my hands to close and stay in a position where my hands were clamped together. They also made it so my arms would be dragged to the middle of my chest like a death pose. It's like they did that magnetically. Eventually, by God, it had to break up whatever they did to my hands. I now realize that this was them controlling my hands and moving my arms to try and get complete control of my body. I had to write notes reminding myself that they were trying to take over my body because they did something to my mind that made it hard for me to take it seriously. As their presence grew stronger, they would try to stop me from sleeping in general, mostly when I tried to take naps. By tapping me forcefully every time I would try to sleep or doze off, they kept waking me up. The banging in the house was also getting a lot worse too. There was a moment where the red-headed woman came down when I was lying in my bed. She was trying to put a black cloak over my right side. I quickly got up before she could do it. One of the nights I couldn't be bothered to resist the energies going into my feet, so I let it happen. I could feel her or another entity approaching my feet, slowly tapping my foot to see if it was safe to enter, like they didn't know what I was capable of or something. She entered my feet and I could feel her laughing inside of my body. She then aroused my penis and before stimulating it, she started to penetrate my rectum over and over again. She then dropped this huge weight in my stomach that caused my belly to sink. I later found out the reason for this as when I was sectioned in hospital, the weights that they put in my stomach faded. And this almost felt like fire blocks built up in my stomach and loads of heat energy was circulating through my body. But because she was already in my body, she dismantled it on the two occasions that they formed. As I had been drawing through stress when they tried to restrict me when drawing, and having had my heart and back of my head burst, drawing now gave me serious PTSD and anxiety. I would find it difficult to breathe. I was able to emit large amounts of energy from my heart for some reason. It felt like I was getting closer to being connected to my emotions again. I felt so incredible, like I could scream and shake up the earth, but they were suppressing me though, blocking me from reconnecting with my emotions. They could affect my heartbeat and completely slow down the rhythm and make me feel tired. It seemed the longer they stayed in my body, the deeper the influence they had over my body. They put this lock on my feet that felt like it kept me in a certain rhythm. Like every time I walked, I felt like I was being pulled at a certain pace. Later, they would distort this feeling in my feet and it would drag me in circles like I was confused. I tried going to acupuncture sessions to try and get rid of them, but it didn't work, and they would laugh at me every time it didn't work and project images of their anger at me like I had no right to try and escape. She would pull at my lips and take away the muscles in them. It felt like they were trying to take over my mouth. I remember clenching my mouth, walking around the shops in a panic, trying to look for knives or scissors to buy so I could cut my lips open and not lose control of my mouth. Now, when they put astral pills in my mouth, at this point, when they started to put astral pills in my mouth, if I swallowed them, I would be completely consumed by another atmosphere. My nose would fill up with scents of another world, and it would mask her presence in my body. Every time it would wear off, she would have influence over a new part of my body, like for example, be touching me in new areas or moving new muscles. When going for walks, I would still be touched, shocked, and stung. New sensations appeared over time of something cold scalding me, and something that felt like water drops, like each entity had their own sensation associated to them. They were pulling at my teeth even more than before. I didn't realize it was them until I could see her holding my astral teeth in her hands, gripping them. It felt like my teeth were falling out because she was pulling at my teeth astrally, which made them feel really weak. One of the times when I was sleeping in a dream, she put a curse on one of my teeth, and when I woke up, I could feel that tooth was really weak. The electrocutions were really strong and big, sometimes on my eyes. They shocked me so much I would fall to the ground and start crying. They were growing stronger and banging into my field even harder. I could feel the space around my body bursting, especially around my spine. They were trying to break me down. One morning I was awoken by them stabbing me in the brain with a spear. I couldn't think properly, and it had a huge effect on my behaviour, like I would do things that were out of character. I decided that morning that I was going to leave home to try to get rid of them somehow. I started walking to a park. I didn't plan on returning, so I left my keys and phone. It felt like creating physical distance from my house where it all started might get them to go away. The entities seemed frustrated with me. I was walking all day trying to get there, and when I finally made it, I kept on seeing dogs like my grandma's and realised I couldn't do it to my family, so I returned home. I tried so hard to get rid of them, but they were so firmly attached to me they didn't want to leave, which was really annoying. I did try to take my life by suffocating myself with gas in the kitchen. There was another time when I was walking around a park trying to get away from them. I spent a large amount of the night walking and thinking I can't come back home, but I had no choice but to. I started to cut my arms, legs and stomach to try and create some distance from the entities, because when they tried to descend on me before buying the statues, cutting myself broke me out of a trance. At least it felt like it broke the connection between me and them. There was a moment where the number 7 completely filled the wood on my door. The geometry of that would give me goosebumps. From that point, I could feel something building inside me, like I was going into a shaking episode because of how vivid geometry was appearing on the door and walls. Geometry was always made me get tremors, like trypophobia. My years of practicing drawing and applying texture to surfaces and weight to objects probably made this worse. I was getting better at stopping them from entering my feet, and after non-stop walking in my garden while eating garlic, I noticed if I didn't speak to them or focus on them, they would slowly fade, and I could feel them turning into little balls in my hands. That's when I realised when I was detaching myself from them and they were pushing me and stuff, they were trying to get me to focus on them again. That's what I recommend if you accidentally ever summon spirits from statues or objects. Try to ignore them and get rid of the object straight away. Do not masturbate around them, as they will use their energy to remain attached to you. If you remain detached, it is possible that they will eventually go away. After I began to detach from them, they seemed to change the way that they attacked me after that. I thought they were giving up and going away at one point. I could feel them talking in the corners of the room. I decided to lie down, and I heard one of them say, the female one, I heard her say, we need to reprogram him. I heard her say, we need to reprogram him. I got up and laughed it off because I didn't know what it meant at first. I could feel them opening barriers in my eyes, like they were finally able to see through my eyes. I decided to stay awake all night, and in the morning when I was practicing detachment, I took that chance and went for a jog to get rid of them for good. I could feel them tapping me to get my attention, But as I ran, they faded. But they were still trying to put Astra pills in my mouth and in the back of my throat. I tried not to swallow them and kept on running. I could feel them fading and them residing in my hands. I used my aura and focused it in my palms of my hands to try and force what was in my hands out. I was jogging for a long time. Eventually it seemed like I got rid of them, and I headed back home to try and close the void in my feet by drinking garlic and water. Everything was quiet until I got home again, and I could feel the female spirit, which I view as Artemis, as an orb trying to force her way back into my body through my lips. This time it didn't work. Because of my self-sabotaging behavior, I had the thought that I allowed them into my body again, and then that triggered a hysteria which caused suddenly an energy to overwhelm me, and I could feel them coming through my feet again, but this time it was different. In my mind, I could see what felt like legions of entities forcing themselves on my body. I grabbed my wallet and some jugs of water and headed to the shops again to try and get more garlic so I could defend myself. My mom tried to stop me at the door and was asking what I was doing and where I was going and why I was going out again. I had no time to explain, I just had to leave. When I was speed walking to the shops again, I could see and feel myself being surrounded by 8-foot tall beings surrounding me, and they put a force field around me this time. It looked like two white landing strips zooming past me, and I could see a distorted barrier around me, like it was to block people who could see them from seeing them. I stopped off at the church to try and fend them off from going up my body. It was overwhelming. Little kids were watching me and looking at me like I was crazy. Nothing was stopping them from going up my feet and legs and into my body. I could feel my calves shrinking in size from the pressure. I got to the shops and bought tons of garlic and sat down outside. They kept trying to force energy up my body like they were forming layers. I couldn't take it, so I walked from the shops to a nearby park. I could feel them taking over my body, moving my fingers and arms. The intensity of their presence was growing stronger and stronger. I decided to cut my fingers with my nails by scratching off the skin, so that if I lost control of my hands, the sensation of the pain in my fingers would give me some influence over my hands still. I sat down at the park and took off my socks and shoes, trying to stop the energy flowing into my toes. I could see the giant entities all around me. They also started to affect the bugs in my field of view and getting them to touch me. I knew I couldn't return home, because if they took over my body, I didn't know what they would do to my family. I couldn't turn to my friends because I didn't know what they would do to them. So I decided to make my way to London on foot, since I had no money. I thought getting away from my house and the city I lived in would create enough mental detachment to get rid of them. It was night time by this point. I could hear their footsteps behind me as I walked. Eventually the police stopped me on the motorway and arrested me. I lied at first and told them I wasn't from the city I was in and that I was trying to get back to London. I eventually told them the full story about the spirits and what they were doing to me. They called an ambulance and decided to take me to a hospital. While waiting to see a doctor, I was still battling the energies that were going into my feet. The stress led to something new. The image of a white spatial object over my hand appeared in my mind, and I could feel it over my hand. Eventually, I was assessed and admitted to a different hospital under Section 2. For a moment in my room in hospital, it was quiet, but then the barrier suddenly surrounded me again, and I could hear the banging on the surfaces of the room. The toilet looked like it had been surrounded by its own barrier, as the space was distorted. She was talking in my body again and touching me. The next day, I was assessed by the doctors. I didn't tell them the complete details of what happened to me because I didn't understand it all at that point. They gave me aripiprazole. This did help a little bit, as it gave me a thin layer of distance and protection from them. It stopped them from putting Astra pills in my mouth and them having a strong effect, but didn't take away their presence and the sensations of them touching me. They could still force energy up me and take away the muscles in my lips. They were trying to work past the medication. So they were exploring new ways in which they could pursue taking over my body. They already had influence over if I felt sleepy or not. When I was taking melatonin tablets to make me sleep, they could suppress the effect of the tablets and absorb the melatonin. So now they seem to get access to a part of my brain. I could feel it being clenched in my forehead. That would make me doze off every time I tried to relax. And as soon as I would fade, they would attack me or take away an object in my mind in an attempt to get further control of my body. I had to always be walking because if I sat down to take a break, they would induce the same effect of sleepiness to get past the tablets. They would do the same if I tried to sleep in my room. They would catch me between sleep and take an object from my mind, like me giving a cup and spoon, which probably had a metaphorical meaning. Since it felt painful when it was taken, I didn't want to give it up, but they would take it and it would feel like I lost something. I'll be forced awake after it happened. I was only able to sleep at night. That's the only time they let me sleep. I would want to limit my time interacting with other patients, but because of them not letting me sleep or making me doze off anytime I was alone, I had no choice but to leave my room and walk and talk. I found the tablets made it harder for me to fight against hysteric backlashes from my thoughts, and as the medication got stronger, it took longer to diffuse the hysteria, and it felt like it was more damaging to me. One time she took one of my lungs, and as I fell between sleep, and as a result it became difficult for me to breathe for a while. There was another time where I was dealing with attacks from them and hysteria, and as a result my body was really overheating and I couldn't breathe. I rushed back to my room to fight off the feelings, and suddenly images and feelings of my brain changing shape filled my mind and a white object appeared above my heart. It felt real. For some reason I could see things that were going on in my body, at least the changes, metaphysical changes that were happening in my body. I could feel parts of the floor in the hospital had more gravity, like there was more resistance. Sometimes it felt like certain planes would dip even more than they looked. I would try to walk out of most of the hysterias by walking around. When I was walking, it felt like I was getting out of the mental labyrinths they were putting me in, and I would get pieces back of my perception that they would mess with. One of the days I felt like I could start flying. I tried to attempt it, but she just attached a chain astrally to my body and to the ground. I don't think I would have actually flown, but possibly I could have astral projected, which wouldn't have been wise considering I was possessed. Another time I suddenly felt like I was over 30 feet tall, and an image projected in my mind of a red-headed giant sitting above the hospital garden I was in. I felt incredible. An uncontrollable smile came over my face. The feeling eventually faded as they were suppressing me. That night I could hear them whispering into my ear that I was 4'11" instead of 30 feet tall. Another thing they said to me was, "He's too dangerous to release." This time it was a male voice. The next morning I felt like I had masses stopping the energy from going into my feet through my toes. Suddenly I felt my penis getting stroked by energy and becoming erect. I felt something envelop my penis. I thought she was testing me, so I engaged in having sex with her energetically. I felt like she was rewarding me. I felt my penis being stimulated, and I was clenching and unclenching my genitals and imagining having sex. I could feel myself almost ejaculate. It went on for a while until I started feeling my auric field move from surrounding me to surrounding the space in front of me, so I decided to stop, which is really stupid of me. I was being a fool. I don't know why I did that. I just wanted to get out of the situation I was in. I was being foolish. I heard stories of succubuses draining people of energy after having sex with them, but I didn't think it would happen to me for some reason. After it happened, I felt really weird. Then I could see in my mind my aura leaving my body and draining through my skeleton to my stomach. I couldn't walk. It felt like my body had been contorted into a ball. I was walking on my tiptoes almost because I couldn't put my feet down. I couldn't speak, and every time I got slightly aroused, it felt like I was being sucked from my upper body to the center of my stomach, and this would repeatedly happen for a couple of days. Astrally we were still intertwined. It felt like half of my body was taken. And with that, I lost even more of my emotions and what felt like a lot of my abilities. I couldn't feel aura being released from my hands anymore. I lost my willpower, my physical strength, my humour, my energy and life force, like I had been castrated. My whole personality changed. I no longer felt like other people when I was around them. I lost everything. It constantly felt like a part of my body was falling through my feet. The planes of the ground felt even more like they dipped when I was walking. My arms were locked and stiff, and so were my hands. My speech was jumbled, and I found it hard to speak in general, like I had no life in me. I felt like I lost everything. I lost my confidence. It was the lowest I've ever been. If it was ever fun battling them, it wasn't fun anymore. Space around my feet felt infinite. They would they would force more energy up my body, like they were going for the kill. I would feel her intense presence behind me even more. I could feel her smiling. The pressure would make my ears shake. I would be in the garden with my bare feet trying to stop the energies from going up my toes, as now I couldn't block them like I could before. It felt like all my teeth were falling out. I had really deteriorated. The doctors wouldn't let me go even though my section 2 had passed. In my next ward round, I asked to be put on a depot injection because nothing was working. I had no hope. Nothing could get rid of them. The depot worked almost straight away. I could feel a barrier coursing through me and around my feet. She wasn't happy. I could see her yellow eyes glaring at me. It's like she tried to stop the effects of the medication by biting my neck with something. The depot stopped them from coming through my feet. The higher the dosage, they would talk to me less, and they wouldn't feel as intense, and I didn't feel as naked against them. I also could no longer see them, as the only reason I couldn't see them all the time was because they were suppressing my ability to see them, because they didn't want me to see them all the time. They weren't as able to do things to me as much, like drain the strength from my arms and hands. They could no longer put me in sleep paralysis and choke me or have sex with me and make me have a wet dream. The stronger the medication got, the more extreme the hysteric backlashes would get. I was fighting off so much energy that my mouth felt like it was filled with electricity. And because of the stress of another object manifested in my space, it looked like a flying, elongated pyramidal shape made out of brain membrane. Its spatial weight was large, and I could feel it above my head. It felt as real as my own hand. That's how real it felt. The spirits didn't like that I was creating these objects and were working to get rid of that ability. Eventually, this pyramid shape would multiply. They felt disgusting. I thought I was going to develop brain cancer or something because I was creating all these solid feeling objects in my mind. I realised they were stopping my emotions from coming back because when the dosage of the depot got to 400 milligrams, I felt my crown activating again and some emotions pouring back into me. She soon put a stop to this and dragged that part of my brain down to a deep pit in my body. They were also making me forcibly swallow astral pills to try and combat the power of the depot. They could make me swallow. It was weird. They could make me swallow, but even if I didn't want to swallow. While I was in hospital, they attached this huge machine to the back of my spine and inserted all these wires into the back of my head, just like in the Matrix. I could vividly feel it attached to me, and as a result, my lower back became weaker and easily fatigued, and my hips as well. After they increased the dosage to 600 milligrams, the doctors let me go home. When I got home, everything was quiet until I masturbated. Then the same barrier surrounded me like landing strips. I realised I couldn't masturbate anymore, so I had to stop as it was giving them energy and making them stronger. It felt like my life was over. I had no future with them in my life. I was in bed all day. I could feel her raging in my body, screaming, trying to move my arms and legs. I begged her to go away, but every time I said please, she would say no. She was trying to find a way to go through my feet because she was doing the same things she did when she initially entered my body, focusing on my toes and tapping them. I would have huge lapses where I would feel her presence intensely. The feeling like she was trying to take over my body was overwhelming. I felt like I couldn't speak, like she was taking away my voice. It took really long for those sensations to go away, and this would happen often. They would only let me sleep at night, and if I stayed in bed longer to doze off, they would make me snort, and I would snap out of it and wake up. That was really depressing. When I laid in bed, I could feel something swimming under me through my mattress, like I was on top of water. When I was dozing off, a tall blonde man picked me up from my mattress and tried to kiss me. I turned my head and he ended up kissing me on my cheek. He then dropped me in my bed and my whole bed shook just like I had been dropped from my height. Another time when I was having intrusive thoughts, they reached their hand through my chest, I think it was her, and it felt like they took my heart. It felt really bad. I would feel her hands adding stuff to the machinery on my spine. It felt like this was their response to the medication. I could feel the weight on my back. Sometimes I would still feel I'll still manifest spatial objects. So they did a thing to my brain, like they destroyed everything. I found it hard to talk and think after that, but it got rid of that ability after they destroyed everything in my brain. It felt like they chopped up my brain into pieces. My thoughts also quieted down because of them. My mind, for the first time in 12 years, was silent. I no longer had racing thoughts, only occasionally. They made my hands and arms so stiff that I couldn't even open a letter. I also completely lost the ability to cry. I tried to take my own life by gas again. Life was empty, so I eventually started masturbating again. It made it worse. They got even stronger. I could feel them getting more control over my body parts by working through my subconscious mind and nerves, like they're getting more influence over my heart, and it may even progress to being able to stop my heartbeat or cause overrelated stuff. Now it's gotten to the point where they have a lot more influence over my body again. It's progressing now to the point where they can talk through my mouth and move my body a lot more and do more expressive motions with my hands. It's progressing to complete possession, but it's not there yet. I don't think it will get there as long as I'm on the medication. They deconstruct my mind when I'm sleeping and take away the ability for me to remember my dreams. I can no longer distinguish dreams from reality like I could before. They've broken down the barrier in my mind that stops the movements and noises I make in dreams from crossing over into reality. For example, if I scream in my dreams, I'll wake up screaming in real life, or if I kick or punch in my dreams, I'll do it in real life. I don't want it to progress to sleepwalking. Worst part is I can't take this seriously or feel fear because they suppress those emotions. I don't want to become a danger to people, my family, friends, or strangers, because I know the entities' intentions. The red-headed woman and the other entities never sleep, so it's a 24/7 battle as they try to work past the medication and take over my body. In the present day of 2025, they've attached more machinery to me, like they've put a mask over my mouth, and they've put more machinery into my eyes. They inserted these things into my pupils. And they also inserted this parasite into my stomach, which makes me want to go to the toilet all the time. Like, life's getting much harder because they have so much influence over my bowels and my sleep, so that it's getting really difficult, which makes me really suicidal. And I understand that the Greek gods are demons. Do not be fooled by those videos that talk about deity work and how nice the gods are, or how people actually think they're working with these spirits. If they ever have the ability to possess you, they will possess you and they will harm you. They're not entities of love or goodness. They do not want to see you grow or reach high consciousness. They just want to suppress you. I now believe that they are the handlers of the Matrix. Just like most gods, maybe. I don't know for sure. But I know the Greek gods are definitely handlers for the Matrix. I know my afterlife is going to suck and be really terrible because of all the machinery they attach to me. And when I do die, they're going to have so much influence over me, and where I go, it's going to be really hell. I don't know where they're going to take me. I just hope that no one else makes a mistake I did and buys statues, especially of the Greek gods or any gods in general, because you are really putting yourself at risk. Not everybody is at risk of interacting with spirits because their body may not be on the same frequency as theirs, but it's still a danger to buy statues. Please, I really must reiterate, do not be fooled by those deity worship videos where they feel like they work with the gods, because the gods are evil, especially the Greek gods. They are like their stories, where they are malicious, spiteful, and hateful beings. They do not like humans. Please don't be fooled.